dynamic, iterative process to help you find what we think is the best supplier and understand through the process how you will work and the innovations that you can co-create. So we've got a whole focus on agile sourcing coming on up. Obviously, loads of new directives coming on through at the moment, a lot of them pertaining to the ESG agenda. So CSRD we'll be talking to this afternoon, and CSDDD as well. And we've been doing a lot of work here at the GSA on service provider sustainability and how you can actually assess the impact that your service providers are having on your own ESG performance. Obviously, within that ESG, there's a strong social agenda. When I talk about strategic sourcing, I'm talking about the strategic sourcing of technology and business services. This is very much a people industry, and for us, although there's obviously huge environmental impact, and that's becoming colossal with the advent of AI and AI being used for delivering business services. We really are a people industry. So for us, the social aspects are incredibly important. So we've got a lens on DE&I in the workplace and obviously diversity in the supply chain. So we've got a whole masterclass coming on this afternoon on supplier diversity and the new best practices that are appearing there. We are not talking about it today, but just so you know, the GSA is working with our partners in the United States on a new impact sourcing standard. So we're trying to move away from some of the social washing that we're actually seeing, where people are saying they're doing impact sourcing, but really their view of impact sourcing is giving jobs to people in poorer areas, but are still graduates from middle-class families. We are looking at impact sourcing being validated as being giving meaningful long-term work to very disadvantaged individuals. So work like that underway. And then there's a new subject which we'll be touching on today as well, which I don't know if anybody has heard of, service as software. So apparently this is going to be the biggest revolution that the outsourcing industry has seen. So whereas we were traditionally an industry that sold people, sold FTEs, we then became an industry that automated the process and used robotic process automation alongside employees. Now we're going to be buying agents, AI agents delivering services. So we won't be buying people anymore. What's that going to mean to our industry? So lots of programs, projects of work that the GSA is undertaking. But what we're finding is everybody is reinventing wheels. So we're pushing something that we call the standardization revolution, which is really focused on us all working collaboratively together to develop those new best practices and do it for the greater good of the industry collaboratively. And we think that way we will be able to improve the performance of the industry as well as the performances of our individual businesses. So the reason for the previous image of being a box of spanners is I was having a conversation with my partner about everything we were doing, and he said, it's like a box of spanners. And it's just like, oh, that doesn't sound very good. That's not very polite. And I was just like, no, they're all intrinsically linked. These things all have interdependencies on each other. And they do, you know, agile sourcing needs standardized frameworks, which is what Hemant's going to be presenting on. ESG performance is so much better if we all understand what one service provider's performance looks like compared to another service provider's performance. So we actually understand whether whether our service provider is one of the best for ESG or is actually, you know, flailing compared to the other service providers. We need industry standard terms. We want to push the supplier diversity agenda, but then we make it so difficult because we create really difficult due diligence for them to come through. We all have different contracts that take forever that small companies can't really negotiate. So all of these things kind of are coming together, and the programme of work for the GSA is intrinsically interlinked. So this focus back in on what actually is the role of the GSA. And I've scratched my head. I've gone full circle lots of times about what is the role of the GSA. We started off very much being a forum for buyers to understand how to outsource their network operations. We then brought the service provider community in with us, and for the last 35 years, we have been a forum that discusses the best practices for strategic sourcing, and bring in the buyers, the service providers, and the rest of the ecosystem, the advisors, the lawyers, the consultants, all together in the room. And that's still very much the programme of the work that the GSA undertakes. But now we're creating new best practices, which is all around the ESG sustainability agenda. So we're doing this. And today we had a meeting before we kicked off this session with just the buyers. And it ended up being a unanimous decision that we needed to have a sustainable strategic sourcing leaders forum, where we come together and we discuss the challenges that we're all facing. I think the first challenge we're going to discuss in detail as a peer group is Scope 3, and how to actually get the real Scope 3 reporting and evaluating that reporting of what good looks like from our service providers, because that's not happening. It's not happening easily at the moment, and we're not doing it well enough for suppliers of all sorts of different sizes. So we've agreed that we're going to look at that. We've also agreed that we're going to look at social value packages and what they look like, and effectively start sharing what our service providers are doing for us, so we know what the art of the possible is if we look at engaging with that service provider through the RFP process. So those are the signposts of what we're going to be discussing today. And it's all going to be delivered through three bodies. So the GSA is your UK arm. You know, these are the in-person meetings that we're having, and the ones that have followed and need to be compliant with, you know, UK regulations and legislation. We do have the Global Technology and Business Services Council, which is an alliance of industry associations like the GSA all around the world. So we are working with the Global Technology and Business Services Council to put a laser lens on what's happening in every other region around the world, and start looking at the ESG performance of countries, for example. I think that's really important for you guys to know where you're putting your work, what the ESG regimes and performance of those countries are. And then most recently, we launched a joint venture with our partners in the United States. The two biggest buy-side nations in the world have come together to launch Formiga, which stands for the Formation of the Industry for Good. And there we are really looking at working at the best practices that enable us as buyers and service providers to drive change, not just for the triple bottom line. What's it called? Yes. So for profits, people, and on planet. So this is going to be where all the global standards sit for impact sourcing, for global service provider performance and things like that. And I just wanted to close on this point, and actually I've really sad news that both of the leads for Formiga have passed away since our last summit. So Graham Matheson, our performance lead from John Lewis, who was actually driving the Formiga from the UK perspective, and Dan Lang, who is basically the founding father of the BPO industry, who was our service provider lead from the United States, passed away this weekend. So I personally, and I think a lot of my colleagues here, really want to drive this industry for good agenda in their names, because they were so incredibly passionate about the headline piece that buyers need to use their commercial brands to drive good. And service providers absolutely need to not be poured along kicking and screaming. They need to have it within their DNA to want to deliver sustainably. So I hope you'll come with me on this journey and, you know, help in their names carry on making our industry recognised as an industry for good. So don't want that to be dour. I want it to be, you know, uplifting. We're going to do some really, really great work together. And now, without further ado, let's get into some of the presentations.